Welcome to the Future of Teamwork podcast, where we explore cutting-edge strategies to keep teams human-centered, drive innovation, and empower you with the tools and insights needed to help your team excel and thrive in today's rapidly changing world. Your host is Dane Groeneveld, a seasoned expert with over 20 years of experience enhancing team dynamics and innovation. Today, Dane is joined by Francie Jain. Francie believes happy and productive communities are made up of people who strive to receive support to become their best selves. She founded Terawatt to create an impactful, affordable, and intellectually honest way to help everyone thrive. Most teams want to work better together, but the path from intention to action is where things fall apart. The challenge? Coaching is often reserved for the top tier, and traditional training doesn't meet people where they are. In this episode, Francie shares how she's helping companies unlock team potential through scalable, accessible coaching. As the founder of Terawatt, Francie has spent years figuring out what makes development stick and how small group coaching is bridging the gap between intention and execution in ways traditional programs often can't. They'll explore how companies can build cultures where people learn in real time, grow together, and want to stay. So, teamwork makes the dream work, and we're here to inspire your next collaborative breakthrough. Gather your team or put on your headphones, and let's dive in together.
Welcome to the Future of Teamwork podcast. My name is Dane Groeneveld, CEO of the Huddle 3 Group, and today I'm joined by Francie Jain. Francie is the founder of Terawatt, and today we're going to be talking about a lot of the impact that she and the team are having in coaching organizations, particularly healthcare organizations, and improving on employee retention and turnover, amongst other things. So welcome to the show, Francie.
Thank you, Dane. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be here.
You bet. I'm fascinated diving into healthcare. It's not a market I've spent a lot of time in, but recently it's been capturing a lot of my attention. And it's a unique workplace environment with all the different teams that are working there, and the fact that the patients are right there in, some trying moments.
Yeah. Oh my. Yeah. I mean, that's like the understatement of the century. It's so different from business, which has pretty much been my whole professional experience. And like one of the number one things that's really interesting is it's a little bit of a joke, I say, but there's no like policeman. Like there's no one person that can tell everyone how to behave or like how to adhere to the rules. It's a little bit more disparate groups, like figuring out the way it works, figuring out what works.
Yes.
As opposed to like how it should work. And in some ways that's like beautiful and organic, and other ways it can lead to like toxic environments because it's really easy to avoid people because again, like no one's really in charge of you.
Yeah.
There's no one person who's kind of like laying down the law. And so I've learned that, with some of the work we've been doing, and it's really fascinating because it's almost like specific to itself, like the dynamics in there. And it's fascinating. It's just fascinating.
So much to get into. Well, before we dive in, maybe you can provide myself and the listeners with a little bit more of a background about, how you came up in your career and how you came to be doing this work in this space with Terawatt.
Yeah. So hopefully I am an inspiration for anyone who's spent a while on their startup. I came up with this, the germ of this idea, like the twinkle of my eye, was in 2016. And basically it was a discussion during the presidential debate between Clinton and Trump about how many manufacturing workers had lost their jobs since 2000. Mm-hmm. And there was like a little kerfuffle, like who's been doing more to help the manufacturing workers who's lost their jobs. And I don't remember exactly what they had said, like 5 million workers or 10 million workers. And there was a little back and forth. And I thought, well, wait a minute. Is that real? Like, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And and so that just led me onto this like fascination with trying to even see if that was like a true fact. And that was true. There's no real number that's hard. I've found a lot of research about it, but somewhere in between 5 million, 15 million people lost their jobs in manufacturing since 2000. So, but now we're another almost 10 years later. So I haven't really been following like every year, like what's been happening. My understanding is actually there's a little bit more manufacturing coming back to the States. But the point of the idea was that, okay, well, so where are those people going for help? That was my question. And I thought, okay, well, there must be like a Yahoo of career change. Like, who's doing that? Like some sort of cheapo, not, you know what I mean? Like sort of cheap and expensive thing where like it doesn't cost very much, you know, maybe like someone's monetizing it through advertising or something, you know?
Yep.
And I couldn't find it. And I kept thinking, that is crazy. And then I thought, well, I'm just using the wrong keywords. Like, you're going to have to get better at the search. And after a while, I just was like, listen, like, I'm a pretty educated person. I've been focused on this for a while. I really can't find that. And so then I spent a while trying to figure out like what could be a business model to address that. But again, like my background is in finance. You know, I'm not like
it's a big jump.
Person. Yeah. So it took me a while. Like there's a lot of like research and, you know, proving to myself and that kind of stuff. And so ultimately the initial stab was at a community, and it was going to be like kumbaya. We were going to help each other out, and it was going to be really affordable. And it was going to be different pockets of career changers. And one of the pockets was stay-at-home moms returning to work.
Yep.
And that's, by the way, it's a huge number of people
market.
every year. Yeah, it's like 4 million a year.
Yeah.
So anyone free startup idea. 4 million moms go back to work full-time and part-time every year. It's a crazy market. Someone should do something.
Well, the Mum Project does some pretty cool work in that space.
Yeah. Although there are a lot of moms. I was just hearing today from my friend that she's on there and she's like, I can't get hired. Like there's so many people, you know, all the moms around there. But it's a great idea. I mean, I think there could be more. Like, I think there should be somebody who's like trying to like processize almost like with an AI, like how to help them change careers or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There should be an AI way, like kind of a cheap way to do it. So I was like putting this thing together, and I thought, you know, what these people really need if they're switching jobs is they need a coach. And for a second, I was like, oh, well, maybe I become a coach. And then I realized, no, I really like the scaffolding. I want to like the solution. That's, to me, it's like so much more exciting.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to a coach I know, and I said, listen, what if we got like 10 moms? This was like in 2017. I was like, what if we get like 10 moms? You tell me your rate. We hire you for an hour. We split your rate by 10. They don't have to go anywhere. They can do it when the kid's asleep. They don't have to leave their house. You don't have to go anywhere. And the woman who I was pitching it to said, oh, I'd do that in a heartbeat. And then it was like a big epiphany for me, because I realized that coaches need leads. Like I hadn't thought about it. And so then I got me really excited, because my whole like post business school career has been like matchmaking effectively. And like that like really was like right up my alley. Like, okay, cool. So I can go back to being like a matchmaker. I don't have to worry about the content, which was what was killing me with the community.
Yeah.
And I didn't really have a platform, you know, I wasn't like a well-known anything. And so this just, when it all sort of came together, it was like really exciting for me. And it's still taken a while, but like that was like the germ of the whole thing. And then even figuring out like, no, it's not B2C, it's B2B. Okay, now that it's B2B, we need a new name. Oh, now we need a new URL. Oh, now, you know.
Yes.
And like every sort of change led to another change. And now we're finally like in sales mode. And I wouldn't say, I'm not sure if we fully hit market, what's it called, market fit.
Yeah.
But we're close. And one of actually our additional like focuses, you know, right, is really focusing now on like healthcare, because of many, many reasons, but I think just we can help a lot. You know, certainly I'm no healthcare expert, but I think that what we're doing will be very easy. Could not be easy, but we could plug into hospitals and easily help them.
Absolutely. That's a cool.
And so that's kind of where we are.
It's a cool story, Francie. And I think,
I haven't.
It really, the point you made earlier on like people in transition, that's just about to get supercharged, because people have been in transition from industry level shifts, but we're about to see major job level shifts with AI continuing to kind of come into the workplace. So we're going to expect to see a lot more reskilling, upskilling, and redistribution of talent into different teams. So I love the way you landed on the coach being sort of the real genesis moment of helping a group of people move to wherever they're going to go.
Yeah. Well, and you know why? It's because I'm like a big believer in therapy and coaching and all this kind of stuff. Like I love feedback. And I've often felt like those are the people that help me get unstuck when I've been stuck. And like, they're like really like my heroes. And also like looking back on my life, like those are the people who are the cheerleaders who help you like find what what makes your heart sing. And so one of my other things I used to talk about is how when you have a problem, or let's say you want to switch jobs or whatever, like the last people you should tell your friends and family, because they're just going to tell you all their fears. You know what I mean? Like, and I've done that 100 times, and it's like not helpful. But what is helpful is when you speak to someone who says like, oh, well, let me help you do that.
Yeah.
You know, like, let's find a way. Like, that's awesome. And that's what a coach is, you know?
100%.
And I think that like, I just feel like that kind of relationship like would be great if more people had it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I've been sharing that with a number of people lately, that the value of coaching and therapy, you know, for often from different people in different formats, is really helping me achieve a lot of like personal growth, personal awareness. And I can see it in a lot of my team members too. So I do feel like we're really just entering a realm where that's going to become much more mainstream, and not just for the executives. You know, the concept of doing it in a group is brilliant.
Yeah, or even now, like I spend a lot of time listening to Hard Fork podcast.
Yeah.
And I've been so tickled with Casey's thing about how he's using like Claude for like coaching.
Yes.
And like meditation. And I think that like giving people the ability to kind of get feedback, but still kind of in a private, affordable way is super cool.
Yep.
I don't think it's a replacement for like a human, but I think that it's like an incredible way to get smarter and get feedback. And then like maybe when you connect to a human, then you have like a deeper level question, or, you know what I mean? It's like you're able to make the jump faster as opposed to like being on repeat or something.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I like the way that you've kind of made it an augmentation rather than a replacement, because we are seeing a lot of coaching platforms pop up, and they're great because they give you exposure to framework questions you should be asking yourself, but they also miss out on something, which is just that, I don't know, that human belief, that real ear to be listening. I'm not quite sure what it is, but I can see the difference.
Yeah, so I'll talk about that because I've been so tickled by these coaching AI. You know, there's a lot of them popping up, and I think I get it. Like people want the immediate answer, and I do too, right? Like when I go on ChatGPT, it's awesome. I think though the irony ultimately is that unfortunately we work in a world with the other humans.
Yeah.
So you actually do have to know how to relate to people.
Yes.
Because it's not always going to be the computer. So there's a component about practice, about, you know, practicing speaking, practicing listening, practicing problem solving, hard problems, like, you know. And so I think there's like a real difference between like doing versus learning. Like you can learn, you can be the foremost expert in, you know, emotional IQ, right? EQ, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But unless you're practicing it, like you're crappy, you're bad at it. You know what I mean? Like you can't be like, just know the facts of EQ and like be great at EQ. Like it's not going to happen.
No, you're totally right. Actually, I just had Heather Conklin on my show, who's the CEO over at Torch. And she was saying, as they've been bringing coaching out to some of their customers, that, and in her own coaching experiences, she was sharing that often we go through a coaching moment and we're like, oh, this is the framework. This is what I need to be aware of. This is how I need to have the conversation. I've got it. Thanks, coach. And you go out there, and then 6 months later, a stressful moment, a tension, a change in the team pops up, and you don't automatically go back to that framework. So it's important that you've...
Stress short circuits it. Yeah.
It absolutely short circuits it. So it's important that you have that human relationship with the coach to be like, hey, you know, today this happened, and they can bring it back for you, and they can maybe listen out a little bit more for what may be happening that you're not even aware of, that you wouldn't even know how to put in as a prompt to the AI.
100%. And I think that to me is like that's the point of the professional, is like they know 100 times more than you do. Like you wouldn't know what you don't know what you don't know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that yes. And the other thing I was going to say is like, when originally I came up with this idea, it was like about the math and like, you know, the cost, making costs more affordable. But when I speak to coaches, one of their big things is like, yeah, but don't forget, like people, like adults learn better with other adults. Like there's also like a pedagogical reason. So like when you're just like, it's kind of why AA, like Alcoholics Anonymous AA works. Or like there's other areas that have group coaching, because it turns out that like, you're not that unique. Like the thought that you had, probably someone else has that too.
Yeah.
And realizing that commonality is like a huge, I don't know, it's like a boost for everything, right? When you just realize like, oh, okay, like this is just part of the process. And like, we're all having a similar, or at least I know one other person who's similar to this and I don't feel as alone or all these things. Right. And so I always forget that. Like I always really leave with the numbers, but really there's a real reason to learn in a group.
That's very cool. I want to dive into that a little bit more. I
Yeah.
know I've participated quite a bit over the years in a Vistage group, which is like a CEO
Sure.
peer group.
Mhm.
And it was awesome. And that point that you touched on, that we're not that unique, it is so true. So you'd be sitting in there and you're busy, you're running your own business, you've got your own family and life goes on. And you come into a room of CEOs and one of them starts saying, well, I'm having this real problem with my eldest son or my sales leader or whatever else. And you pause and you listen. And like you said earlier, unlike a family member that jumps in and just tries to help, you listen and try and understand, well, what is their problem and how they're going to get it. Next thing you know, as you're processing their issue, you start to realize, oh, I've got that issue going on right now too. So it's helpful.
Yeah, but isn't that so cool? And it's beautiful. I think there's something really lovely about that. And again, it's like, that's also how humans relate to each other, right? It's like, that's vulnerability and like that builds trust.
Yes.
And it's like, all these things enmeshed in that. And it's funny because we have actually a few coaches from Vista. We have a different model because Vista is a little bit more like locationally driven, right? It's like, there's like an in-person, or maybe they changed, but there was something about people had like territories. Like
correct. Yeah. You have sort of a regional group and then there'd be a chair or a coach who's running it. And then there'd be 10 or 15 of you that would come in and do the workshops and they'd bring a speaker in, for the morning.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a great model. And, I think again, like the connecting is so valuable. Oh, and it also brings me this other thing where, again, like I always lead with numbers and I always think I'm going to just like push it through. I'm going to like brute force this, make this whole thing work. And then like when I'm able to like jump, from plateau to plateau, it's when I connect with people.
Yes.
Like you just can't, it's just not how the world works, or it's how business works. Like if you want a business where people buy it, like you have to get involved with people.
Yeah.
And I think about that all the time. Like I have to always remember that myself. Like I get in these funks where I think, oh, I'm just going to buy this thing. It's going to help me. But really it's like the connecting with people and having the conversations are really what changes the trajectory.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great point on how group coaching, group learning can help. How does it show up in healthcare? Because I've seen some of your posts online and like we started the show, the fact that you're having impact in healthcare is really intriguing because it is such a tough work environment. Yeah. Do you find that you're bringing groups together, within a facility or across different facilities that share certain job roles? Like how do you form those groups?
Yeah. We had a great project where it was just one surgical group within a teaching hospital. And that was where it kind of started. The fantasy really for us, right, is to work with a C-level person at a hospital so we can really make an organizational impact. Because what we want to ultimately be doing, right, is creating an ROI and showing impact.
Yes.
And quantifying it. And the more people doing it, the more impact that can have in the organization. And so like for this organization, this one group of surgeons, it was just, I have to say, it was just fascinating because, the first time I had what do you call it? I'm not getting the name. I took Myers-Briggs, for personal assessment.
Yep.
In business school. And the thing that blew my mind was I came out as an off the charts extrovert. And I'm, you might say, oh, that makes sense. But for me, it was a huge shock because I'm not a person that will walk into a crowded room and go shake everyone's hand. That would never appeal to me. But what is for sure the case is that I'm motivated by relationships, a lot. And so anyway, when I learned that was a huge aha moment in my life. And it really also changed what I wanted to do at post business school. And so we did a personal assessment. We had brought in two coaches for, I think it was 40 doctors. And one of them did this great, it's like leadership styles.
Yep.
I think it's ILS, individual leadership styles,
Yep.
I think was the assessment. Because you could do it, it was an in-person thing, and you could do it in person and you get the results right away. You didn't have to like, input them into a computer or anything. And what the coach did, what was so smart, is then she separated people, and like you ended up being like one of 6 groups or something. Just the way it was about the way you process information and the way you think about what's important. And that whoever had created that had come up with 4 or 6 groups, and so she separated people physically. Like you had to go to different tables to like be with your people, and that was like some of the moments of that session, I was like almost crying, because like people were like so happy, and it explained so much to them about how they were, why, when they were talking to people, it wasn't working, how to help people know who they were as a like what their ILS style was. So like at one point they were saying we should have on our like pass cards, we should like say what kind of
I've seen that in businesses.
Thinker we are.
Yep.
And I was like, great idea, because like one person needs to hear the numbers. Someone else needs to know like, what's the result? How would this change? And like everyone needs different things. And when you just keep saying the same thing, it's like hitting your head against a wall.
Yeah.
And it's like that kind of stuff. I just think like, it's so exciting that like this is stuff that coaches is like the bread and butter for these executive coaches. They know this stuff really well, and like we can come in and make a big difference. And then by the end, what was so cool, like doctors are saying things like, I don't mean to be snapping at the nurses. I'm just like not sure how to handle it in the moment. And like, things started to like come out. Again, it's like trust and like vulnerability stuff is happening.
Yes.
And we weren't even trying to get people to like open up like that. That was just like spontaneously happening.
It's brilliant.
Yeah. And so I just think a lot about, I think if that's like one little group, like there could be so much cool stuff that we could help with. And another thing that goes on that's so different from the business world is there's this very hierarchical nature in hospitals.
Particularly with surgeons.
And it makes a ton of sense if you're like an operating theater, right? And like, one person has to be in charge or else it will just be a mess.
Yeah.
Okay, we get that. But if you're not in an operating theater, it doesn't need to be that way. And I think there are a lot of like good ideas that aren't getting floated up to the surface because of this hierarchy.
Yeah.
And so I've heard a few examples from nurses, and I think that is a really interesting thing to start to think about, and like how that could be changed. And I don't think it really serves many people. So I'm just not sure why there wouldn't be like industry-wide interest in dismantling it. But probably then again, like maybe that's my ignorance. Maybe there are other reasons besides,
It's interesting. We had some work that we were doing with a lady, Maggie Jackson, who authored the book Uncertain, and in her book she researched and actually worked closely with the surgeon. And they realized that surgeons, just because of the way that the system works, they're trained to do remarkably complex things very quickly, make a lot of quick decisions. And so there's a pressure on what the surgeon should be doing. So going back to your point on like how people work, I think we've trained the surgeons often cases to operate automatically in certain environments, but we haven't given them the skills or the opportunities to practice working outside of that environment. And so they kind of come in uncertain of how they should be working with other disciplines or outside of the operating theater. And so I do think that there's a need for intentionality around how you're designing the organization and each piece of the work, not just the critical piece.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love that. Yeah. And it's very interesting you say that, right? Because maybe part of it is like, well, I know that I'm good at my job, so I'm just going to default to that behavior. Yeah. And that works for me well because no one dies at my operating table. But it's like really different when you're kind of like communicating with people and problem solving or scheduling.
Yeah. Problem solving sometimes isn't what some of those people want to be doing. They're like, hey, I've got a plan for this.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just, I don't know. I find that it's just so interesting. And like, what else? I mean, I think there are a lot of cool things or, there's this whole thing. There's also like a dynamic too of like the admin, which is different from like the hospital workers. Cause you're basically like all the operations paying for the admin staff.
Yes.
And so, but they're kind of in charge. They're not really in charge. And I think that like, what I think ultimately what just needs to happen is that there needs to be more of a vibe of getting everyone in this together to solve like bigger problems, and like just a lot more buy-in, and less like this is your job, that's my job, but more like we're in it together. Like and whatever way that is to kind of get people to connect and work for the long goal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The goal as opposed to the mini goal, just the big goal.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really interesting. I've been working with a mentor on systems leadership accreditation, and Ian McDonald, who kind of wrote the book on systems leadership. He talks about when you go into organizations, there are certain sort of mythologies that are, understandings of people in that organization for how things get done and who's got what authority. And you go into hospitals, schools, large institutions, and so much of that just exists, but it's not always intentional. So actually being able to come in and say, well, to your point there, what is the higher purpose of this institution, this healthcare facility, is really important. Right. But if that's all you talk about, and then you don't break down where are the mythologies around how surgeons are treated, or how admin's treated, or who makes what decisions, if you don't work out what people think is going on versus what the company says is going on, then you're kind of always kind of going upstream against the tide.
Totally.
So there's a lot there.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. And you have to be, I think, also super duper honest about just like what is happening, and not kind of gloss over it with like professionalese, kind of stuff. But
correct.
And a little bit talk about feelings, and because we're human, and like that's part of the thing. And and the other thing I wanted to bring up is that my eyes like really were opened when one of our coaches is named Dr. Tommy Thomas, and he and his father developed something called opposite strengths. It's like a way of it's like coaching content, like a way of coaching people. And basically the point is saying like, just, if you're good at math, that's great. That doesn't mean that, someone who's not good at math isn't. It just means they have other skills. And so the idea is just talking about kind of like how people are whole people and they have different strengths and different weaknesses.
Yes.
And, just the idea of just kind of understanding the differences, I guess, in people. And he flexed them up in me. But my point is, his content was used with a healthcare system in Colorado, and they had like 4,500 employees.
Yeah.
And it was like doctors, nurses, techs, admin, everyone. And they started out with 24% unemployment, which was just higher than the average healthcare unemployment number. So employee turnover, right? So sorry, a voluntary employee turnover.
Got it.
Meaning people who left on their own. And so they were 24%. And then when they brought this system into talk, and like, so everyone kind of had the same vocabulary. That was like, I guess, the goal. And they had the same vocabulary. And every year, because of that, they're able to reduce their voluntary employee turnover by 1% to 2%.
Yeah.
And then after 9 years, it got to 4%.
Wow.
Voluntary employee turnover, right? And I first heard that, and I was like, yes, yay, 4%, way to go. Okay, but here's like the kicker. The difference between 24% and 4% voluntary turnover is $30 million.
It's a huge number.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you have a lot of it, and that's why that article was so interesting about a fiduciary duty, because $30 million every year, just excess cash, that could be like a whole building every year. I mean, what you could like think of all the things you could do with $30 million
investments in new technologies, community outreach, so much. Right.
You could have bonuses, you could have salary increases. I mean, it's unlimited, what you could do with that. And so I just feel like that's really the point, which is it actually is, if you do a good job and people don't want to leave. Oh, and they were getting all these awards when they got to 4%. Yep. That was the other thing, which is all these hospitals won awards too. Who doesn't want awards? I mean, like, it's definitely a goal. And so they won a bunch of awards. And so it was like such a huge win. And I just feel like that could be all of us. And then we all have just happier lives, who doesn't want to work in a place that's working?
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I got really interested in teamwork, Francie, is that I've had the benefit of being on some really good teams for periods of time. but it's very rare that you're always on a good team because dynamics are so changing. And I was like, why can't we be on that winning high energy team? Because when you're on a great team, like the energy is insane. Work doesn't feel like work. You're going home, you're a better person. Like just everything in life is good. And particularly when you're in a healthcare environment and you're treating people who are going through a tough time, it's even more powerful. But you're right, like work has become draining for so many people, and the ways we do it, the ways we interact with each other, creating that framework of common language and beliefs into how we're going to treat each other. People aren't therefore operating out of fear and anxiety because they know what's expected, or they know how to confront confusion or tension or challenges when it pops up. And that's huge.
Yeah, exactly. Or, when you're saying that, all I can think about is that incredible Google study, Project Aristotle.
Yes.
Where it was the one thread between all the successful teams was psychological safety.
Yeah.
And that's exactly kind of what I was referring to earlier. Like, you just can't learn psychological safety from ChatGPT. Like, sorry. But
Correct.
like, you can learn what the tenets are.
Yeah.
You can learn, you can read about it. But it's like that kind of stuff where people feel safe and you feel like you're able to take risks because it's not scary.
Yeah.
And if someone's not going to put you down or undermine you or whatever the thing could be. And I agree with you. Like, I think leading with fear is really how we get to a lot of this toxicity.
Yeah.
And the more, trust we can have, the better it is for everyone. And ultimately, I mean, I think that's just like, it's not just a goal for everyone. I mean, who doesn't want to be firing on all cylinders all the time? To me, that's like the fantasy.
Yeah, it totally is. It totally is. I think when you know what your job is, you know how you're performing, you know where you're going in the business. Ideally, you know who you're helping, because it's always nice to see the impact of your work. And then finally, you know what you get in return for all of that energy that you're contributing. There's so much like just trust, confidence, assurance in terms of, hey, we can get this done and we can bring others into this and we can keep going.
Yeah, no, it's like the bet, right? And it's so funny too. Like, I always think about these dynamics where a lot of times you'll have this weird group and you have no idea why it's working.
Yeah.
But it's like something is like working. I had this boss one time who was like, no, you never change what's working. He's like, nobody knows, but like, if it's working, don't change. I always remember, I thought that was so funny. But it's really true. Sometimes they're just like there's some magical je ne sais quoi, and you just like keep it.
But maybe it's a really interesting story. Maybe that's a reason why we struggle so much to land consistently performing, high energy cultures, is that when it is working, we're like, hey, don't mess with it. And we put all of our time into the broken stuff. Like, we need to study the high performing parts of the culture more and understand more. What is it, Francie and Dane, in your team that you guys are talking about? Because every team has problems. You guys can't be without problems. So how are you dealing with that differently to the other group, and what can we learn from you? It's a challenge.
Well, and also I think it's a great point, because I bet for a lot of people, what they're doing is, it may even be like, with like pre-conscious.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they may not even be able to talk about it.
Yeah.
Because they're not thinking. They're just doing it. It's not even like
it's muscle memory.
They would say. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You see that in sports teams too. You'll see an unlikely group of people put together and have success. And you're like, hang on, like, you guys wouldn't all hang out together, at the movie theater and mall at the weekend, but you're all showing up and playing this game, and you communicate with each other in a way that just solves problems. Like, the feedback loop here is really good.
Yeah.
And you fill in for each other when one person's challenged, the other person comes in and knows what role to play. It's like, that stuff's so cool when you find it. Yeah.
No, it's really, and I think actually you make a really good point. I think that's really hard to tease out.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's not, like a piece of clothing, or it's not where you grew up, or it's not education. There's it's hard to figure out like the brain waves, or what the incent, I don't know, like what prompts somebody to do something to help another person, or, collaborate,
It also raises the point, and I wonder whether this is true in healthcare, is that when the stakes are high, it can be really tough. It can be very stressful for a team, but it can also be very meaningful for the team to find a way to work through the problem. I found that in a big way when COVID hit. When COVID hit, I found like the teams that I was working on just pulled together and got really focused on this is how we're going to help each other through it. Where actually in really good times when, sales are high and business is performing, people tend to kind of drift apart a little bit, and, everyone takes success for granted a little bit. It's very different.
I think that's really interesting too. I mean, I think that like it would be really cool to think about how to tease all this out, right? In a way that's a little more science and data, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and then the one thing you can, and that's like what I think is interesting, is there definitely are ways to know the impact. I think the inputs are going to be the hardest thing for us all to figure out how to, Google did that good job, and maybe that was like 10 years ago, it might have been more. So like they may have gotten further along in being able to tease this out a little bit. But I just think that like, that's ultimately like the bleeding edge a little bit is trying to figure out these small unspoken things that are working really well.
Yeah. I used a tool, actually, we had John Estefanos, the founder of this tool, on the show. He built a platform called Rally Bright, and Rally Bright's, it's, a cool platform where you go in and you answer some questions, like a survey format, and you give some, more like prose feedback, open field text. And you look at the various kind of dimensions of resilience on a team. And what I found about that is it was a very good diagnostic for what's going well, what's going less well. And you could very quickly look at it and say, well, here are some of our strengths as a team. Let's really harness those. And then here are some of our weaknesses to work on. I thought that was really cool. And what I like about it, and I'm hopeful for, is that as you do that periodically, you all of a sudden accelerate what could be 12 months of problems that you're just persisting with into a conversation that you can act on within a couple of weeks. And then if you are taking the action, then if you're taking action on where that confusion or lack of clarity is on the team, you would imagine over 2 years, 3 years, you could overlay the performance data of patient safety or patient experience or bottom line impact, savings in a particular function. So I do think that we're very close to having the appropriate sort of technological infrastructure, the scaffolding, as you said earlier, to really start seeing where it's happening.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that like we like to focus on is comparing against a control group, and like basically at a time series, I guess you'd say. But like, let's say it's like, so you like one group that's kind of similar to another group, but only one of the groups gets the coaching. You survey them before, you survey them after, and you can look at the KPIs or other organizational things that are going on, even like revenue or sick days. And then you can measure, like, did it make a difference? Did the coaching make a difference for those two? And I think that's just, to me, like crazy cool, because
it's very cool.
You kind of can get away with someone who says, well, I mean, who knows?
Because
you're like, well, actually, we just compared two populations within the same time at your same company. So it's kind of an experiment.
There are some cool, I'm seeing some really cool investments in coaching capacity in larger organizations. I know a friend, Mickey, down at MD Anderson's doing some really cool work with their group in the healthcare space. And then we also were doing some work with MetLife, and they were bringing a lot of coaching capability across that platform. And they were starting to look at how you create those control groups and measure, who's signing up for the coaching, because often that's a gap. And then for those people that do sign up for the coaching, how is it improving their performance day to day and their function and over time as they promote that type of thing? There's also it's interesting to me to hear like the different organizations you're talking about, because, there's a lot of, I guess, like the number 1 and 2 reason people quit a job is because lack of professional development. Another one is bad bosses. And so if people are getting more support and professional development and management training, they're going to become better bosses just because of the education. But then also you're less likely to leave because you work for an employer who's supporting your growth. And that's kind of like our whole thing, right? Is that like, that's really like what the human capital research is showing, right? Is like that there's this relationship between like retention and professional development. And I think that like, especially in companies like insurance companies, like pretty much have to do it. Yeah, you're absolutely right, because they're tough environments. I liked what you said before the show too, Francie. You were saying a lot of people can be hesitant on professional development because they're like, well, this person's not going to go on and become a CEO, or even someone joining the program. Well, I don't have an opportunity to get to CEO. Why would I go and do that program? But I'm hopeful. I'm interested in your view on this. As we see more coaching, as we see broader brush professional development in organizations because it's more accessible, and as we see the work that we do change, are we really shifting from professional development to create tomorrow's leaders into professional development to just create healthier, more productive humans, at and away from work?
Good point. Yeah, exactly. I mean, okay, so I always think of this. I used to have this incredible therapist, and she used to say, I would say things like, well, I mean, I have this problem at work, but I don't have this at home. And she goes, well, Francie, I hate to tell you, but you take yourself wherever you go, you probably have that same problem both places.
Yeah.
And so my sort of take on professional development and any of this stuff where people are learning is everything helps the person everywhere. So whether you're helping them like be a better parent or whether you're helping them, be a better manager, it's all connected. So this also comes back to like when I was a young employee. So when I was a young employee in the late 90s, I basically all professional development was on my own time on the weekends. Like people were like, you want to do that? Like, just don't let me know about it. I don't want to hear about it. You pay for it. Because the perception was, okay, listen, like, why would I pay for someone to get better at their job that would make them more valuable, and then they're just going to leave? So that was kind of like the perspective. It's like, it's basically like a losing bet kind of.
Yeah.
It was kind of like the thought process. And now it's actually really 180. And it's that the more that you develop employees, the less they want to leave.
Yep.
And what's crazy is that typically professional development, right now, let's say the average professional development budget or learning development budget per employee in America is $1,200 a year.
Right.
It's not very much money.
No.
And so like, if you're able to have people stay and be better at their job and make it a better environment and a better culture, it's not like you're spending a lot of money for that. It's kind of insurance policy. And I think that's what people need to understand more is like, well, it's an insurance policy, but it's also what is the return on investment? I mean, and that's also, I'd be fascinated to know the MetLife numbers, because I bet they've been really studying this, and I bet they see a nice return for them in terms of what they're spending and what they're getting.
Yeah, I'll definitely follow up with you on anything that they've gathered when I reconnect after the show.
Yeah.
It's very cool. And so a final question then, because time's flying by. As you think about the work that you're doing at Terawatt going into the future, do you see it as being, more group coaching environments where you're doing, long programs of, incremental sessions, or do you think it will be more intervention based efforts? Like where is that all going to head in the industry?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Well, so we're a marketplace. So I always say people are kind of like Airbnb for executive coaching. So my sort of view is that I think coaching is kind of like buying self-help books, in that if you buy one self-help book, you'll probably buy another one. And I think that it's not necessarily always going to be you want to hear from one person. You want to hear different perspectives. And maybe 1 year you're interested in communication. Maybe the next year you're interested in like leadership, or, it could be anything. And so the big thing for me is like, I think that humans want choice.
Yeah.
And I think where this is going is that like the really smart companies are going to be basically giving employees a stipend.
Yes.
That's some relationship to their salary.
Yep.
And like each company will have its own, whatever number that is. Like some of the really generous ones who have a lot more margin will probably give people a fair amount of cash to do professional development. And, it could be like 1% of your salary, or it could be 5% of your salary, And I think that like the more the people opt in, the better results you get, because they're interested in it. It's not this top down stuff, and it's not black and white. It's not training.
Yes.
It's like you're co-creating.
Yeah.
The more that, and I think that's also part of the future too. Like the more that like people can be hands off, like I think that's a huge trend in learning and development right now. I think it used to be like top down, but
Yes.
like one of the things that we see a lot is the buyer thinks there's a problem. And if you actually survey the employees, they think there's something different. And so what's
Interesting.
important is to actually, if you're buying it on behalf of the employees, you have to have them opine on what the problem is. And then
Yeah.
that's great, because then you can say, okay, here's what you guys said. This was the problem. We're going to solve it with this thing. And I think that like, it just makes the lives of learning and development people better. And I think it makes the culture better because you're listening to the employees, and that's what they all want. I mean, who doesn't want that?
Well, it's a big agency play, isn't it? If I love the stipend concept. If you're giving an employee the ability to access a marketplace, pick a coach, work out what they want to work on, there's, they're not being mandated, hey, you've got to go and do your next training on, how to read this report.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we have never gone down this path, but I know that like places like Walmart and some of the other places will do these like what do you call them? Like accreditation, like medals. They're little like
little badges.
Yeah, little badges. Like it's a it's like a thing, like a badges.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's really weird. And I always think these badges are so dumb, but there's like some gamification where people love them. And they love getting the badges, and they love telling people about the badges. And like, that's a way to get people engaged. It becomes almost like a little competition about how much you've done.
I agree. I think, and if you can, going back to your point on data and ROI, if you can start to show how, this is what I think is fascinating about the badging concept. If you can start to show that people at this stage of their career that get this badge and move into this function tend to have higher outcomes, better retention of their teams, better attraction of team members, better patient safety, whatever it might be, then all of a sudden the data starts to craft the journey, the learning and the coaching journey, which is super cool.
Yeah. And I would also add that what's neat about that is like, I think like when you think about this individual employee, I think that there are probably plenty of employees that like, they would do a really good job if they had a better sense of like what they could do, like opportunities. And I think that by making it sort of this badgification or the ability to have them do it, like give them opportunities to choose for themselves, I think unlocks a level of engagement that sometimes isn't there when you're basically just like a junior level person. You're being told to do X, Y, and Z. And I think that's exciting too, because there may be somebody who's like, wow, I just never like learned this stuff. Like, this is so fun. I love it. And may just become a huge star because this like education was unlocked for them that they never had access to.
It's so true. One final quick story that reminds me, some team members that I was working with recently were telling me that they're not salespeople, and we had got them a coach who's good at sales coaching, which was very unconventional in the way that it worked. And what was interesting is these individuals have actually since started to become some of our better salespeople. And it was like, no, we don't want to do that. But the coaching unlocked an awareness of like, well, actually, there's a way to do this that is meaningful and ties into my strengths and passions. So it's very cool when that coaching intervention can be the catalyst for a team member finding out actually how they want to show up at work and the type of work they want to do.
Oh, yeah. In fact, it's so funny. I have these sales coaches that I know and who I love them. And their whole thing is like, sales is really just about education. And I think if you can think about it like that and like just helping people like see and like more like a matchmaker, that was always my thing. And like, cause then you're just saying like, this may not be for you, but let's just talk about it and we'll see. And like, guess what? People would much rather have a conversation where you're not trying to like shove something, down their throat. And I think everyone can really be a salesperson. You just have to like understand what you're trying to do in this conversation. And you're just trying to tell them like what's great about it and you be excited about it. And it may not be for them. I mean, you don't need to get married to everyone in the world. You just need to find one person. It's like for the salespeople, you just need like, 10 a month or whatever.
Yeah, that's it. That's totally it.
That's right now. Yeah. And I think and I had that same problem coming out of college. I remember thinking like, oh, sales, that's so slimy. Like, why would I do sales?
Yeah.
But really, you can decide for yourself, like how you're going to do it. And I think the really good salespeople are much more focused on the relationship stuff.
The relationship and the value. The thing I like about this particular coach is like sales is synonymous with love. If you're a good salesperson, you're helping your customer get clear on what they want and how your product will help them get what they want. So you're actually not doing anything sleazy or manipulative. You're just helping them get what they want. And if they're going to get what they want, there should be an appropriate trade of value such that what they get is worth more to them than what they pay for it. So you're not profiteering. So as you start to break down some of those societal norms that we've grown up with, it helps most people realize that it's very human to sell. We're always selling something, whether it's a product or whether we're influencing someone at home. My daughter to put her washing away. It's a sales job.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think, and it's trust. A lot of sales is trust, right? Because unless someone believes what you're saying, you can't make a sale. So you also have alignment and authenticity and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's a lovely story. And I think that's definitely been my arc too. I just think sales is so fun because I mostly just like chatting with people.
Yeah, it's the best part. Well, talking about chatting with people, thanks for coming on the show today, Francie. We covered some great topics from the importance of having a coach when you're making a transition, particularly work from return to work moms or people changing with technologies. I really like the way that we talked about the fact that coaches need leads. So this marketplace concept that you've built at Terawatt helps coaches come in together and find more of the work that they want. So it's a good ecosystem play. The point you touched on about you want to tell a coach, not friends or family, because a coach is going to help you ask the questions to get there, where friends and family are going to be fearful and try and protect you from potentially an important growth moment. So that's very real. Yeah. And then we dived into a little bit more of, how you create the framework, bad bosses and the lack of professional development for causing people to leave jobs. So much is changing in this space, and it's exciting that you're out there leading the way of change.
Dane, thank you so much. That was an incredible summary. Wow, watch out, ChatGPT. It's amazing you did that on the fly. I'm very impressed.
Thank you. If any of our team want to find Terawatt, where's the best place for them to go searching?
Well, terawatt.co. See, didn't forget the M. That's our website. And then I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, and I'm on Blue Sky, but mostly as an observer.
Yeah, neat. All right. Well, I look forward to staying connected and finding some ways to team up in the future. Thanks,
Yeah,
Francie.
I'd love to. Thank you so much, Dane. Have a lovely weekend.
You too.
Thank you for joining us. Remember that by embracing vulnerability, trusting our intuition, and approaching challenges with compassion, we not only strengthen our teams, but also pave the way for a future where collaboration thrives. If you're hungry for more insights, strategies, and research on collaboration, head over to thefutureofteamwork.com. There, you can join our mailing list to stay updated with the latest episodes and get access to exclusive content tailored to make your team thrive. Together, we can build the future of teamwork. Until next time.